The rain was pounding against the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Church in downtown Seattle when it happened. I stood there in my ivory gown, the one with the delicate beading that had taken months to choose, my hands trembling around the bouquet of white roses. The organist had played the bridal march twice already, and the murmurs from the pews were growing louder. My maid of honor, Sarah, squeezed my arm, whispering, "He's just stuck in traffic. Emily, breathe." But deep down, I knew. When the side door creaked open and Alex slipped in, his suit rumpled and his face pale, he didn't smile. He didn't take his place at the altar. Instead, he pulled me into the vestibule, away from the eyes of our families and friends, and leaned in so close I could smell the faint trace of his cologne mixed with sweat. "I can't do this," he murmured, his voice cracking just enough to make it real. "I thought I loved you enough. But I don't. Not like this." The words landed like a punch to the gut, stealing my breath. My vision blurred, the world tilting as if the floor had given way. I didn't scream or beg. I just stared at him, the man I'd built my dreams around for 3 years, and felt something inside me shatter. He mumbled an apology, something about pressure and doubts. But I wasn't listening. I turned, pushed through the emergency exit, and ran into the storm. The rain soaked my dress in seconds, turning the silk heavy and cold against my skin. I hailed a cab on the corner, ignoring the driver's concerned glances in the rearview mirror, and directed him to the bus station. From there, it was a blur of tickets and transfers until I was on a Greyhound heading east, toward the only place I could think of, my Aunt Evelyn's farmstead in rural Vermont. By dawn, the bus dropped me off at a deserted stop, and I trudged the last mile on foot, my heels sinking into the mud of the gravel road. The old Victorian house loomed ahead, its wraparound porch sagging slightly under years of New England winters. Aunt Evelyn opened the door before I could knock, her gray hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. She took one look at me, mascara-streaked face, drenched gown, suitcase dragging behind, and stepped aside. No questions, no pity, just a curt nod. "You look like hell," she said flatly. "Can't have you dripping all over my floors." The old bakehouse out back. It's empty. There's a bedroll in there. It'll do. I wanted to collapse into her arms, to spill everything, but her tone left no room for that. So I nodded, too numb to argue, and made my way around the side of the house. The bakehouse was a relic, tucked behind a row of apple trees, its clapboard siding peeling and windows fogged with grime. I pushed open the door, and a musty wave hit me, stale flour, dried herbs, and neglect. Cobwebs draped the corners like forgotten lace, and the counters were coated in a fine layer of dust. An ancient wood-fired oven dominated one wall. Its iron door rusted shut. In the back room, a thin mattress on a metal frame waited, along with a threadbare quilt. I dropped my suitcase, peeled off the sodden dress, and curled up under the covers. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the building settling. Tears came then, hot and relentless, soaking the pillow. Alex's words echoed in my head, mingling with the humiliation of those waiting guests, the pitying whispers that must have followed my exit. Why hadn't I seen it coming? We'd argued about little things, his long hours at the tech firm, my dreams of a quiet life, but never this. Aunt Evelyn's face flashed in my mind, her quiet disapproval when I'd visited last year and gushed about the engagement. Maybe she'd known something I didn't. For days, I barely moved. The bakehouse became my cocoon, shielding me from the world. I'd venture out only at dusk to grab scraps from Evelyn's kitchen, a loaf of store-bought bread, a can of soup, avoiding her gaze. She didn't pry, didn't offer comfort. That was her way. Tough. Self-reliant. A widow who'd run this farm alone for decades after Uncle Tom passed. One morning, the sun pierced through a cracked pane, illuminating the dust motes dancing like fireflies. I sat up, my body aching from inertia, and really looked around. The place had potential once, shelves lined with empty jars, a marble slab for rolling dough, faded recipes tacked to a corkboard. It whispered of warmth, of hands shaping loaves, of laughter over steaming pies. Something stirred in me, a faint spark. I grabbed a broom from the corner and started sweeping. The bristles scraped against the worn floorboards, stirring up clouds that made me cough. But the rhythm was soothing, a small act of control and a life spun out of it. As I cleaned, fragments of the past emerged. A tarnished silver spoon engraved with Evelyn Sweets, 1985. A yellowed photo slipped from behind a shelf. Young Evelyn. Apron dusted with flour, beaming beside a display of golden pastries. She'd run this bakehouse in her prime, supplying the local farmers market until hard times forced her to close it down. I paused, tracing the photo with my finger. She'd built something here, then let it fade. Like me. That afternoon, a knock startled me. Through the grimy window, I saw a man in his mid-30s, flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows, carrying a toolbox. He was the neighbor. I'd later learn, Jack, a carpenter who helped Evelyn with odd jobs. Heard someone's in here, he called through the door. Evelyn said the roof might leak. Mind if I check? I opened it a crack, self-conscious in my rumpled clothes. He didn't stare or ask questions, just nodded and got to work, patching a spot overhead. His presence was quiet, unintrusive, like the bakehouse itself. When he finished, he tipped his hat. Looks like you've got your hands full. Holler if you need anything. Then he was gone, leaving me with a strange sense of not being entirely alone. The next day, curiosity pulled me back to the corkboard. Recipes in Evelyn's precise handwriting. Maple pecan scones. Cranberry muffins. Notes scribbled in the margins like, add extra butter for flakiness. Customers rave. I felt a pull. Memories of baking with my mom before she passed. The therapeutic need of dough. On impulse, I rummaged through the pantry remnants. Flour. Sugar. A jar of yeast that might still be good. My first attempt was a disaster, a lumpy batch of biscuits that burned in the old oven. But the smell, even charred, filled the space with life. I ate one anyway, the crunch breaking through my numbness. Outside, the village stirred, kids on bikes. An old truck rumbling by. No one knew my story here. Not yet. For the first time since the church, I breathed a little deeper. Whispers have a way of weaving through small towns like smoke. Subtle at first, then choking. In Willow Creek, Vermont, where everyone knew everyone's grandparents, my arrival in a wedding gown didn't stay secret long. It started with glances from porches as I walked to the general store for supplies, flour, eggs, baking powder. Then came the murmurs. Evelyn's niece from the city ran off from her own wedding. Poor thing. Or worse, must have done something to scare him off. These modern girls. I overheard it at the post office. From Mrs. Harlan, the town busybody with her perfectly coiffed silver bob and a tongue sharper than her knitting needles. Evelyn's too kind, taking in strays. That bakehouse was her pride once. Now it's a hideout for heartbreak. I ignored it, focusing on the bakehouse. Each day, I scrubbed deeper, polishing the marble slab until it gleamed, oiling the creaky hinges on the display case. The work was meditative, pulling me from the loop of Alex's voice in my head. One afternoon, a girl appeared at the door, maybe 14, with freckles across her nose and a backpack slung over one shoulder. "Hey," she said shyly, peeking inside. "I'm Mia from down the road. Mom said this place used to make the best apple turnovers. You fixing it up?" Her eyes sparkled with unfiltered curiosity. No judgment. I hesitated, then nodded. "Trying to. Want to help wipe down the shelves." She grinned and jumped in, chattering about school, her dog, anything but me. It was refreshing, like a breeze through the stuffy air. While we worked, Mia unearthed a leather-bound notebook from a drawer, its pages brittle but filled with Evelyn's recipes. "Whoa, this is like a treasure map," she whispered, flipping through entries for blueberry buckle and honey-glazed rolls. Marginal notes read like secrets. "Fold gently, patience makes it rise." We sat on the floor, reading aloud, and for a moment, the bakehouse felt alive again. That evening, as Mia left, I felt a quiet resolve. The next morning, we tried our first real bake, Evelyn's classic oatmeal bread. Mia measured with wide-eyed precision, her laughter echoing when the dough stuck to her fingers. The oven, after some coaxing with kindling, hummed warmly. The aroma built slowly, nutty, comforting, wafting out the open door. It drew the first visitor, old Mr. Thompson, leaning on his cane, sniffing the air like a bloodhound. "Smells like Evelyn's old days," he grumbled, stepping inside. "Got any to spare?" I sliced a warm piece, slathered it with butter from the store. He chewed thoughtfully, eyes misting. "Takes me back. She baked for my wife's funeral, fed the whole town." He left a few dollars on the counter despite my protests. And a note. "Keep at it, kid." Words spread like wildfire. By week's end, a handful of locals trickled in, farmers grabbing scones before dawn, moms with kids eyeing muffins. Mia became my unofficial apprentice, her energy infectious. Jack stopped by too, fixing a wobbly table without fanfare. "Looks good in here," he said once, his voice low and steady. "You're bringing it back." I shrugged, but his words lingered, a small warmth against the chill of gossip. Mrs. Harlan's barbs grew bolder. One day, she marched in, lips pursed. "Heard about your misfortune. Evelyn must be mortified. Housing a runaway bride." I met her gaze evenly. "We're managing. Care for a sample?" She huffed but took a bite of pecan tart, her expression softening unwillingly. "Not bad," she muttered, leaving without another word. It wasn't approval, but it was something. Nights were harder. Alone in the back room, doubts crept in, Alex's face, the empty church, my shattered plans. But baking pulled me through, each loaf a step away from that pain. One evening, as rain pattered on the tin roof, I experimented with a twist on Evelyn's recipe, adding cinnamon and walnuts for crunch. The result was imperfect but bold, mirroring the shift in me. Then came the knock that upended everything. It was a foggy twilight. Mia gone home. The bakehouse dim save for a lantern's glow. I opened the door to Alex. Rain-slicked hair, eyes shadowed with regret. "Emily," he breathed, stepping uninvited into the warmth. "I had to find you." My heart lurched, a mix of fury and ache. Mia had mentioned seeing a stranger asking directions. Now here he was. "What do you want?" I asked, voice steady despite the tremor inside. He paced, words tumbling out, the wedding jitters, family expectations, his fear of settling down. "I messed up. I love you, let's try again." The air thickened, memories flashing, our late-night talks, shared dreams. But as I looked around the bakehouse, at the floured counters and rising dough, I saw what I'd built without him. "You left me there," I said softly, the words building like yeast, in front of everyone. "And now you waltz in like it's fixable." His face crumpled, but I felt no pull to comfort him. "Go home, Alex. This isn't your story anymore." He left quietly, the door clicking shut like a period at the end of a sentence. I sank to the floor, tears flowing, not for loss, but release. Outside, the rain eased, leaving a cleansed world. The next day, I baked with renewed fire. The scents bolder, the flavors deeper. Locals noticed, compliments flowing. Even Mrs. Harlan returned, grumbling less. Evelyn hadn't checked in much, off on a trip to visit cousins in Maine. But her absence let the bakehouse bloom. Jack lingered longer, sharing coffee and stories of his own quiet life, widowed young, finding solace in woodwork. His presence was a gentle anchor. No pressure, just understanding. As the weeks blurred, the bakehouse transformed from refuge to heart, pulsing with life I'd never imagined. The rhythm of the bakehouse settled into my bones like muscle memory, each dawn greeting me with the soft glow of the oven and the promise of creation. Mia arrived early most days, her backpack thumping against the door as she burst in with ideas. What if we add chocolate chips to the scones? Her enthusiasm was a bomb, turning the once silent space into a symphony of clanging pans and shared giggles. We'd expanded the menu, lemon zest muffins that zinged on the tongue, rosemary focaccia with a crust that crackled. The chalkboard outside, scrawled in Mia's looping script, drew a steady stream, truckers grabbing quick bites, families lingering over tea. Jack had built a small counter extension, his hammer taps a comforting backdrop. "You're turning this into something special," he'd say, wiping sawdust from his hands, his smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. Gossip evolved too. Mrs. Harlan's sharp comments dulled to reluctant praise. "That tart wasn't half bad. Reminds me of Evelyn's touch." Others shared stories, how the bakehouse had been the town's hub in the 80s. Evelyn's pies winning blue ribbons at the county fair. It felt like unearthing buried treasure, each tale adding layers to the walls. One crisp morning, as leaves turned fiery orange, a group of kids from the local school stopped by on a field trip eater. "Miss Emily makes magic bread," one yelled, and soon they were crowded around, watching me knead. I let them try, their small hands plunging in, flour flying like snow. Laughter filled the air, chasing away lingering shadows of my past. But healing isn't linear. Cracks appear when least expected. A letter arrived midweek, forwarded from my old Seattle address, Alex's handwriting, neat and familiar. Inside, pages of apologies, pleas for forgiveness, promises of change. "I see now what I lost," he wrote. "Come back. We can start over." I read it by the window, sunlight warming the paper, but my chest tightened. Mia noticed my distraction. "You okay?" she asked, pausing mid-stir. I folded the letter away. Old ghosts. Nothing more. That night, alone with the cooling racks, I burned it in the oven's embers, watching the words curl into ash. It wasn't anger fueling the flames, but closure, a quiet burring of what was. Evelyn's return loomed as autumn deepened. She'd called once, her voice crackly over the line. "Back in a week. Don't wreck the place." No mention of the changes, but rumors must have reached her. I prepared, baking her favorites from the notebook, maple walnut bread, its aroma a homage. The day she arrived, a chill wind rattled the windows. Mia and I were pulling trays from the oven when the door swung open. Evelyn stood there, coat dusted with travel, eyes widening at the transformed space, fresh paint on the walls, vases of wildflowers, a hum of warmth. What in God's name? She trailed off, stepping in slowly. Mia beamed. Welcome back. Try this. It's your recipe. But with a twist. Evelyn took a bite mechanically, her expression unreadable. I wiped my hands on my apron, nerves fluttering. We kept busy. People love it, the old flavors. Brought back. She wandered the room, fingers tracing the polished counters, pausing at the photo I'd framed, her younger self, triumphant with a pie. Her shoulders sagged slightly. I closed this down because it broke me, she said quietly, more to herself. After Tom died, every bake reminded me of loss. Mia slipped out discreetly, leaving us alone. I approached. It saved me, I confessed. After the wedding, I needed something to rebuild. She turned, eyes glistening, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. You didn't just rebuild. You revived it. Us. The words hung, heavy with unspoken history. She pulled a folder from her bag, deeds, listings. Was going to sell. But now. She tore a page slowly, deliberately. Maybe it's time to bake again. Together. We hugged then, her embrace fierce and unexpected, bridging years of distance. That evening, we sat by the oven, sharing stories, her joys and sorrows in this space. My Seattle life unraveling. Laughter mixed with tears. Forging something new. The bakehouse pulsed with possibility. No longer a hideout, but a home. With Evelyn back, the bakehouse evolved into a partnership. Her experience blending with my fresh ideas like ingredients in a perfect dough. Mornings started earlier. Her voice calling out measurements while I experimented, infusing lavender into shortbread, swirling caramel into rolls. Mia remained our spark, handling the register with growing confidence, her after-school hours filled with chatter and chores. The town embraced us fully. The farmers' market invited us to vend, our booth drawing crowds with samples that vanished in minutes. Jack became a fixture, not just for repairs but for quiet conversations over coffee. His steady presence a subtle comfort. You've got a gift, he'd say, watching me shape loaves. Not just with baking, with people. Challenges arose, testing our fragile rebirth. A nor'easter hit hard one weekend, power flickering, roads flooding. We baked by lantern light, distributing free bread to neighbors hunkered down. Mrs. Harlan, of all people, showed up soaked, accepting a warm loaf with a gruff "thank you." It shifted something. Gossip turned to gratitude. Internally, doubts lingered. A dream haunted me, standing at the altar again, Alex vanishing into mist. I'd wake sweating, but Evelyn's knowing glance over breakfast eased it. Pain doesn't vanish, she'd say. It kneads into strength. One crisp day, opportunity knocked. A local food blogger discovered us. Her post going viral. Orders surged. Wedding cakes, ironically, became requests. I hesitated on the first, memories surging. But Evelyn guided me. Turn it into triumph. The cake, a towering vanilla with fresh berries, earned raves. And with it, closure. Alex faded further. A chapter closed. As winter approached, the bakehouse glowed with string lights. A community hub for holiday treats. We hosted a gingerbread workshop, kids' laughter echoing. Jack helped decorate, his hand brushing mine, sparking unspoken warmth. Evelyn noticed, smirking. Life rises when you least expect. Snow blanketed Willow Creek, turning the bakehouse into a cozy haven amid the chill. Evelyn and I baked side by side, her stories unfolding like layers of Philo, tales of young love with Tom. The bakehouse's heyday. the grief that shuttered it. You reminded me why I started, she admitted one evening. Steam rising from fresh pies.
Mia?
Now, a confidant, dreamed aloud of culinary school, her growth mirroring mine. Jack's visits deepened. Walks through snowy orchards led to shared vulnerabilities, his loss, my betrayal. No rush, just a gentle unfolding. The climax came subtly, a letter from Seattle friends, updating on Alex's new life. It stung briefly, then freed me. I baked a symbolic loaf, spiced with everything I'd learned, and shared it with the town at a winter festival. Applause rang out, Evelyn beaming proudly. As spring hinted, the bakehouse stood resilient, a testament to renewal. But questions lingered. What if we'd never broken? Would I have found this joy? The answer whispered in every rise of dough. Sometimes shattering leads to wholeness. And in that, the true sweetness lies.